I'm gonna talk a tiny bit. I guess the way I'm trying to structure it is to kind of give a little bit of background, so give people a bit of kind of historical context about humor and why it matters and where it's mattered and what it's done for people, um, and then give a couple of kind of concrete examples of where I see people making really good use of humor and mischief and whims, and kind of talk about some of the results that people have seen. So a couple of kind of case studies of, you know, these were the inputs and these were the outputs. Because I think, for any session like this where you've got, I think of all of the conferences that I've ever been to, I think the audience at South by Southwest is by far the most knowledgeable. And so you're kind of preaching to an audience of your peers as opposed to, a lot of other ones. So I think giving people some case studies and some examples of things that have worked previously is really important to kind of validate the concept for them up front. And then what I'm thinking we might do, depending on time and hopefully number of people who are there, is we might try and get someone who has a product in the audience and who wants to try and do something like this themselves. We might actually try and workshop it with the whole room as an experiment to see if we can come up with something, and come up with some sort of kind of humor or mischief or something that people can put in. And, if we've got time, we'll do it for two people. But I'd like to think that we can kind of go through some history, some case studies, some practical steps that everyone can take. And then, even though they say at conferences you should never do a live demo, we might try and do a live demo for the fun.
All right, so a couple people's day might get made.
Fingers crossed.
Yeah, fingers crossed for sure. All right.
Absolutely.
Well, I guess final question from me. What are some great examples of what you're talking about that maybe anyone who's curious or interested could go take a look at?
So I think there have been quite a few recently. I mean, from a pure prank and silliness perspective, there was a great product that came out last year called Ship Your Enemies Glitter, where you could send someone an envelope filled. And I mean, anyone who's ever had glitter anywhere near them knows that it kind of goes everywhere. So someone sent one where you could anonymously post an envelope filled with glitter to your friends or enemies. There was a brilliant application called Cat Facts, which came out of a Reddit thread not so long ago, which was a brilliant kind of implementation of just really silly humor, pranks and mischief that you could have with your friends. So Cat Facts is by far one of my favorites. I think if people take a look at the release notes on Medium, they'll see some great examples there. I think if people, I think those are some of the better ones, and I think Slack is a great modern example of it. And oh yeah, the other one that came out recently is it's a plugin for Slack. It's called Plus Plus. So it's like a Reddit upvoting and downvoting system, but for your co-workers. And so, if someone doesn't take their turn making the coffee, you downvote them. Or if someone gives you a crappy lunch recommendation, you downvote them. Or if someone, hits their sales targets, you upvote them. So just really simple little kind of things that you can do to, make the workplace potentially a bit more engaging. And I think that product wouldn't work if it was just positive. I think you have to have the negative in there for it to kind of fully function, and that's been one of my favorite ones in recent times, just because it's just really silly and yet somehow it still works. So I think those are some brilliant ones, and I'll give a couple of case studies about them and a few others in the session. So yeah, hopefully some interesting stuff for some folks who come along.
All right. Well, I certainly think it sounds like it will be. And thanks so much for talking with us, and looking forward to your panel.